So funny story, while I was in the middle of talking to my grandmother about getting her a new radio for her apartment, she mentioned that a office worker there had recently purchased a pair of portable radios to give to her grandchildren and sent me pictures of them because she thought they were pretty cool. Well, I looked at them and I realized, oh, they're in really good shape, and she wanted to, give these as gifts to her grandkids. And they were purchases. They weren't hand-me-downs or anything that had been in their family. Just thought they were neat. And I reached out to my grandmother and said, hey, if you want these to work reliably, I can get them up and running for you. And I offered to do the work only for the cost of purchased parts, no labor charge. And she thought that was absolutely fantastic, and I figured they're in really good cosmetic shape. They're not very complicated. It should be pretty easy to get them back up and running for her, so that when her kids or grandkids do get them, if they decide to plug them in, there's no risk of them just spontaneously combusting or them being disappointed that they simply don't work. And I haven't actually had a chance to go into portables like this before, so although it's not really my cup of tea, it's kind of cool to get to go inside them. Now, we're not going to be doing both of them at the same time necessarily, but I do need to get into both of these because I need to put in an order through Mauser for the remaining capacitors for the Colonial 604. And before I did that, I decided, well, I had to pick these up today. We might as well get the chassis out of them, pull up some schematics, and figure out what we're going to need, because I do know that at least one of these has a selenium rectifier, and I think it's that one. So on my left, in the maroon plastic cabinet, this is not Bakelite apparently. I don't actually know what specific plastic it is, but given that it hasn't shrunk or anything, and it's a solid color, I'm going to assume it's not Tannite or Catalin. It's probably Plascon? Again, not sure. I'm just going off the Radio Museum listings. Anyway, on the left is a Zenith model L505 from around 1953. They offered these in a pretty good variety of colors. This is maroon. And on the right here we have from 1941 a 6G501M, which I always thought these ones that look kind of like little pieces of luggage are actually pretty neat. And it's got a folding down and removable cover, and it's nice because both of the knobs are still there. We still seem to have the tuning dial string hooked up. Oh, that's neat. There's I don't know if you saw that, there's a little flag that pops up when you flip the power switch to the on position. Let me snap the rear cover shut and I'll bring this forward just a moment. But when you turn it on, right down there, that little, it's almost like almost like on a national cash register. It doesn't come up very far. It might, the spring that does that might not be giving quite enough of a pull on it. I'm going to assume that was done so that you don't forget that you've got the thing on and running your batteries down. Because these are dual supply sets. They can be run off of battery packs, and they both have standard 120 volt appliance cords on them. And the L505 is actually particularly neat because it doesn't have a storage compartment for the cord. It actually has a retractable cord, which is pretty nifty. So I'll flip both of these around. This one's actually got some other neat little features. So this is a pretty conventional design. But both of these are set up with what Zenith was calling their wave magnet antennas, which I actually have one of these antennas. And it's really nice to see that this one is still inside of there and still tacked down. So these were, and unfortunately the rubber is going to be way too far gone to be useful anymore. These were suction cuppable portable antennas. You would take it out of the cabinet of this if you wanted to, and you could attach it to a window. And if you were taking it on trips, like a road trip or something, you just stick this to the window in your car, and you could listen to it while you're camping or something. They even say, well, hey, if you're going on a train trip, stick it to the window of your car. If you're running Burlington Northern, or you're on the Daylight Limited or whatever. So that's pretty cool, and it's got a woven fabric cord here with 3 connections, so it's a loop antenna should provide quite good performance, I would think. And we do have a traditional power cord now. Let's see. Do not plug more than... I'm not entirely sure this cord is original to the set. It's got an Underwriters Laboratories tag on it. And the holes that it's passing through here, the material has been disturbed around the edges. I'm going to wager that these holes have been drilled to accept this larger diameter of cord, because a lot of the power cords of the early sets had very small insulation. I think they use smaller diameter wire too. I typically use 16 gauge cords. I think a lot of them are 18. And so you have to size up strain reliefs normally. So there might have been some work done to this. I can see some friction tape right here going to the audio transformer on the speaker. So that is possibly a replacement. This set appears to have, yeah, this has got a 117Z6 rectifier, so no selenium's in there. It does have loctals. I really don't like loctals. That's just me. I just, those really stubby pins and contacts get really dirty. We do have one multi-section electrolytic right here. 500, 300, and 200. I can tell you right now I'm not going to have any of those, so that's going to have to be ordered. And we've got one paper back here that appears to be insulated from the chassis. Let's see, insert AC plug here for battery operation. That's one of the other little neat things, is when you're not using the power cord, you're supposed to stab this into here and it closes a switch that somehow cuts out the rectifier tube and connects in the battery for the plate and filament voltage. And these are, all of the major tubes in here are 1 volt guys. And originally, it would have had a special battery pack for connections on there, and you would have just plugged the battery pack clean into the socket. You don't need to worry about fawn stock clips or any of that junk. Rubber's still surprisingly pliable. Hasn't dry rotted or anything and started coming apart in large amounts. Okay, and it looks like we have 2 screws to secure this into the cabinet, one on either side. Phillips head, very easy. So we'll get that out in a moment. I did want to take a look at the L505 while we're here. And it looks like the back here does not come away. So maybe trying to be as gentle as I can with this, because it's survived a good few decades, and I'd really like to not mess it up right now. Let's get that tucked back in place. In fact, underneath the carry handle here, maybe not the best place for a label, given how much wear it's going to go under, we have a, you can just barely see that. There's a Zenith Universal Radio logo right here. Gold colored, kind of cool. Okay, so there's that one. We'll get that one out in a sec. Now let's take a look over at the 505. I'm going to swap places because I'll wind up unscrewing the camera from its mount. But this guy was a little confused at first because I thought, okay, well the dial's up here, and it's kind of difficult to turn like that. You got to use 2 fingers, and the handle doesn't really get out of your way or anything. No, actually, that is apparently not how it's supposed to work. I realized the right side knob right here, you can just barely see when I move that this twitches left and right. This is apparently our tuning dial, and it's most likely a friction drive to the tuning condenser, and that feels a little sticky. So we're probably going to have to go in there and clean up and see how these two are tied together in order to get that to rotate properly, because doing this, that kind of sucks. Only one other control, power switch, and volume. Get that cleaned up. And then around back, this is cool. They actually updated their wave magnet design. This one is now a permanent part of the cabinet that just pops off. We got a little retention button and a spring clip here. Again, suction cups are dry and hard as a rock. We have this neat little flexible cord here that folds up on the inside, and yeah, that goes right on a window or something. Although the 2 suction cups, there's a decent amount of heft to it here, so I don't know why they didn't just put them up at the top, really. This feels like it would try to peel away. Either way, that's kind of cool. It does have some residue on the cabinet. I'm going to have to see if I can get that off. I think I need to purchase some Nova plastic polish and see if I can't deal with it, because there's quite a bit of it on the cabinet of this thing. And I'd like to get these back to the customer cleaner than they started out. But I'd also like to get this cord in there carefully. Okay. And then that just drops back in place and snaps back in. A little bit of cabinet damage right here. And then, of course, the cord. This is kind of cool, and I'm glad that the rubber is in good shape. The cord is on a reel. And the reel still works, and the cord has plenty of pliability left. I was afraid of that, because if I was going to have to replace this, I'm not sure I'd be able to get a 90-degree non-polarized plug like this anywhere. And then, of course, getting it into the mechanism, who knows how hard that would be. As for getting this one apart, okay, 2 giant screws, and it looks like the shell just lifts right off the apparatus. So, yeah. I think we'll start with this one, because I believe this is the one with the selenium rectifier in it. Try and get the knobs off of the sides here, because I can only guess I'm going to have to do that prior. Okay, those are on there pretty good. A little bit of dust built up. I'm also going to have to check and see what volume of riders these are supposed to be in. I have up to volume 15, I think, so I should, emphasis on should, have a book for these guys. The screws are already a little bit loose. I may have been in here previously and not tightened them down. So really, what I want to accomplish in this video is just get them apart, take stock of what we're going to need. I'm going to look through what I have. I do keep low voltage capacitors. What I don't keep are low voltage capacitors with, you know, like 300 microfarads at 150 volts. I don't generally keep those around. Oh, am I going to have to take all of this up here off as well? I think so, because... Oh. Well, that wasn't exactly what I was expecting. The bottom just falls... Oh, this is interesting. Here, let me... This is a little different, not exactly what I was expecting. So this is basically just a crumb tray, like on a toaster. And we got a little schematic. We've got a 3V4, a 1U5, 2 1U4s, and a 1R5. So this is a pretty basic set. Chassis 5L41, 10 watts on line operation, and it came with a free dead fly. I don't need that. Just to shake that off over there. Alright, so this, as it turns out, I believe the chassis is actually being held in place by these 2 Phillips heads right here, because it is tucked up inside there. That's a little different. Okay, we do have... It looks like they're just putting all their electrolytics in one can to save space. There's our cord reel. That's cool. And how do we get it out? The speaker is one thing I'm noting is going to be in the way. And it is mounted here, and there is a stud down there, and then it feels like the rest of this is just supported by that handle. So I need to get a 1/4-inch nut driver from the look of things. Can this reach all the way in there? Well, yes it can, but sadly, it's... This is going to be a little trickier than I anticipated. I'm going to have to take it away from the camera for a moment. I can't quite get my nut driver on there because the outside diameter of the tool is a little bit too large. And I'm quite positive that has to come out, although... does it? Yes, those brackets are riveted. Okay. So, all I have to do is take off this one nut here for the top bracket. And that's got some shock absorption right there. Yeah, I've got to find another tool that can reach down into that. I swear I had just the thing for this. Let me see if this will work. This is a cordless drill extension, and that will work. We're just going to cheat. And I'm going to do this baloney here. I'm going to get that all the way inside just to get to this one screw that I'm sure will be all kinds of fun to drop back in. Alright, it just barely pokes out the back of the tool, so there's that. And then we just need to unplug the speaker. And this should carefully lift out of the cabinet. Alright, a little bit of dust. Not too bad. And now I should be able to flip this whole contraption over. I should be able to take the screws out of the top with the non-existent Phillips in my... yeah, what happened to all my Phillips in there? Now those studs sticking out the bottom should prevent this from wanting to go anywhere. I'll try and be as gentle as I can. Now these might just be covers for the handle and that the actual chassis screws are hiding underneath. Maybe? These are pretty long. Well, the one thing this will allow me to do is clean the cabinet without the chassis in it, and gives me a little bit more space to work. Okay, so that's retained in place. We've got these two bushings here. And that should just... shouldn't that just drop out now? That's what I'm thinking. Certainly doesn't feel like it. There are a pair of 1/4-inch pieces here. I could take those out and see what that does. Well, that might be it. Okay, that allows us to retrieve the brackets and handle. These are a solid piece, so if this handle were to break, good luck getting it back together. You'd have to make new ones of these and press them in and do all that. I'm sure that's lots of fun. But I'm quite positive this has got to come off. And I don't want to put so much pressure on it that it just kind of... yeah, it's got to come out of there. So I'm trying to use just my fingers. Oh, you know what? Hang on a second. Somewhere around here, yes, I have... This is usually the technique folks say to use for smaller knobs. Just get a cloth or a rag, or in my case, dirty laundry. Try to get it in under the perimeter and get it all the way around so that we can... shoot. Yeah, that's kind of important in order to be able to remove... the chassis. That has to come out. And pulling on the chassis, not really a valid option right now. It's interesting, they made the antenna an integral part of the set to the point where they soldered it right to the tuning capacitor instead of using connections, so that if you had to pull the chassis out, you could get the whole thing out. Seems to have been a minor afterthought. And I tell you what, I'll get back to you on this. Let's see if I can get it off. Okay, I was successful. This was... I was trying to be as careful as I absolutely possibly could, so I don't want to have to find a replacement for this, but I did manage to get the knob off intact. Thank goodness. So this is not a spline shaft, as it turns out. This is literally just a press fit onto a round brass shaft here, and the other end of the knob, or dial in this case, just has this little split ring collar deal here, and the dial itself has two cuts in it to allow it to pinch onto the shaft, and then this collar puts enough, it's a spring steel, it puts enough tension on it so that when you slip it onto this, it holds on there and spins with it without getting, if it drags on something, it won't stay still. I'm not sure if there was some sort of adhesive or something, or if the plastic basically just bonded to the brass. I put the tiniest amount, as you can tell, of plaster in there, set it on its side so that it would stay on the shaft, and left it for a few minutes, and then after a little bit of gentle tugging on it with my fingers, it came loose and popped off there. One tiny piece of plastic did remain stuck to here, but the 99% of the shaft is still intact, so I'm going to flush it out and clean it and get all this nasty junk out of there. But we should now be able to lift this off of its chassis. And, interesting. Has this got to go with it? How does that work? Alright, so do I pull the cord out a ways and then... There's still a few questions I have about exactly how this is supposed to work. I'm going to flip it back over, because I'm not quite grasping this. Okay. So we've got the reel here. Obviously that's got to be there. And then when we lift this up and out, we've got this cardstock we need to, we've got these little retaining nuts in here. That's too large. There are a pair of these push-in style steel clips here and here. This piece of cardstock is actually attached to the chassis right now. I need a very small flat blade. Let's see if we can gently coax these out. These are reusable, thankfully. It doesn't usually take much to get them. Yeah. At least it's not rivets. Okay, so now that's free. So that can come with. I need enough of this unspooled, and I'm not... Is there something in here that's going to make this stop at some point? Once I get all of the cord out of it that I can. No, not really. There is no stop mechanism there. Let me back this out. Okay. This is really awkward. I don't know if you can tell. Because the cord is trying to retract, which means I got to get it through here. The antenna is still attached. We're probably going to have to unsolder that from the tuning condenser in order for that to... Yeah, this whole apparatus is a lot of fun. Well, maybe we don't need to unhook the antenna. We can probably work on the chassis as it is right here. Get this all the way out. There we go. And there we are. Now, as far as the antenna is concerned, there's no way to get it. No, it's just larger than that. Yeah, I'm just going to fire up my soldering iron and quickly unhook those connections, and we'll put them back for testing. However, I would like to make one small mark. Given there's only 2 wires, I doubt it really matters, but I at least want to know which one is grounded and which one is connected to the tuning capacitor. One thing I am noticing on this chassis that's kind of odd, they're all miniature tubes obviously, but this one tube right here that's next to the tuning capacitor is not very happy. It's actually somewhat cockeyed. It's leaning out, and that seems to be because that wire right there coming off the tuning condenser is preventing it from sitting perfectly upright in its socket. That seems to have been a slight oversight. I don't know if I can push that back. Well, if you push it back too far, then it's going to short out against that trimmer right there. So that's that seems to have been a slight mistake in design. Oh well. And I think I'll just undo this nut right here and get the cardstock and all that, and we'll keep it all together with the cabinet. Okay. We can let this live inside here. Okay, so it's a pretty cute, compact little chassis. Vertical tuning condenser. What we got? Multi-section electrolytic with at least 4 segments. We've got 3 to 150 volts, 60, 40, and 20, and then a 200 microfarad 10 volt. I potentially could have all of them. Can, common, negative. Okay. We have a totally sealed up chassis bottom. Well, let's see what we can do about that. I'm not anticipating a whole lot in here. What I do want to see is how the mechanism from the dial is translated to the tuning knob here, because I can see it turned for a moment, but now we've got nothing, so there might be a problem with the dial string. I could even use this string, because I saw a wheel in there. I'm banking on it using... Yeah, okay. It does have a string. And okay, oh, we've actually got... Interesting. So someone has already been in here. This is kind of cool. I've not yet seen this. I don't know if it shows up well on camera. But I knew that this one had a Zenith or a selenium rectifier. This cute little orange guy down here. In fact, I have a larger Zenith selenium rectifier for scale, probably out of a TV or something. Kind of cool. What is interesting, though, is that I am not the first person to come in and replace it with a modern silicon diode. This little guy right here. They've already disconnected the positive connection on the selenium, and we have what is probably a 1960s? I can't quite make out. It looks to be a Fairchild Semiconductor brand. Yeah, so we've got a modern silicon diode here, and an appropriate, presumably, dropping resistor, because a silicon diode has a forward voltage drop of 0.6, 0.7 volts in forward bias. And the seleniums, the general rule of thumb, from what I've heard anyway, I've tried to find actual documentation, is that each plate is give or take like a 1 volt drop. So we would expect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 volts to drop across that. And most of the time, the selenium manufacturers recommended a load resistor, like 20, 30 ohms, after it. When you replace it with a silicon diode, you have to take up the difference in voltage drop, which means you need to know how much current is being drawn on the B plus circuit before you can size up an appropriate dropping resistor. But apparently someone already did that. It is odd, though, that they did not touch any of the paper capacitors in here. They came in, they dealt with the B+. This may have died. I'll check it with a meter out of curiosity to see if it is dead. But that may have pooped out and they replaced it for me. However, is it a molding seam or is that a crack? I thought I saw... Nope, that's just a molding seam. So we'll check, and if that's good, it's a silicon diode. If they haven't exceeded its rating, it should still be good. What I am seeing that is going to suck monumentally, though, is this multi-section electrolytic is right down in here. And there are an exceptional number of connections going to it. My God. Huh. That was not what I was... I mean, I figured there had to be a multi-section here, but man, there is not a lot of room to work on it. The paper caps should not be too hard. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Is that it? Yeah, there's 5 paper capacitors and a few disc capacitors. There is a couplet right here. Hopefully that's still good. We do have a single canned ohm resistor right here. That appears to be coming off of B+. We'll check and see if that's still good. There's our oscillator coil. And this is kind of cool. I was wondering what this rotary switch business was over here. This is our power selection. So when I stick the power cord into it, we can see the shaft rotate, and that's going to disconnect us from the rectifier, presumably from this, and that'll switch into battery operation. So that's nifty. That one might be a little tricky to get to. We may wind up removing the tuning capacitor. There's not a lot of connections to it, so it wouldn't be too hard to do that, just to be able to get down in here, because I got to replace that guy and that guy. And these are all original Zenith labeled parts. Now, I don't really do capacitor restuffing. However, I do like saving the branded components and holding on to them in case someone would actually want them to do restuffing. I have partially restuffed a Zenith 5J217 cube radio. Didn't get it finished, but practically all the paper capacitors in there, I restuffed them and cleaned them and sealed the ends and put a little brown... Actually, I filled the backing with wax and everything, made them look nice. That's neither here nor there. So, as far as the tuning goes, the tuning capacitor does feel a little on the stiff side, but you can see it's running the dial there just fine until we rotate it the other way. It's going great in one direction. Yeah, so this feels like we have a lot of really dried up and hardened lubricants. Because there's obvious evidence of old lubricants on there, so these are going to need to be cleaned. Can I get this bracket out? Ooh. Okay, it is held in place from the top from a single screw right there, and that one is going to require me to remove the winding assembly. I'll tell you, I'm not quite sure how to do the multi-section on this. Is this riveted? This is riveted in place. I would love to get some Adaptacaps. I'm watching Bob Anderson use them. These would work great in that you just drop it into the pre-existing location, and then you can simply tie those in to there. The issue is all the wiring that is currently being used on this. So these connections appear to be, are they isolated from ground? I think this has a floating ground. Let me double check something, because the can is negative, but it's got a cardboard sleeve, which basically indicates that they're keeping the two separate. Possibly because it's a transformerless set. We may actually have one side of the line hooked up to the chassis. So let's check this guy right here. If I check it to itself, okay. If we check it to any of these, we're going to get nothing. And if I check it to that spot right there... Yeah, okay, so this, the can has got a floating ground. So it's insulated from the chassis. It does make it a little bit trickier. And drilling out those rivets... Got one there, and the other one is under all of this wiring here. We've got two resistors going to this lug in addition to this wire. Then that lug has two wires. That lug has two wires. That lug's got one wire, and then there's two wires bonded to the negative of the can there. And then the other negative there is being used for what I'm guessing... is that being used as a line bypass cap? Yeah. So the selenium rectifier was originally being fed directly off of the cord. Okay. Well, I'll put together a parts list and see what I've got. That one's going to be interesting. But we're not here to do that right now. I'm just here to take stock of the parts we're going to need. Which means now it's time to dig into the other one. I'm going to put the bottom back on this guy for the while being. Well, actually, no, I need to be able to write all those values down under here, because I'm going to need those as well. We will, however, put the screws back so I don't lose them. My main concern is getting in and around the dial drive assembly, because if I don't get the cord and everything out of the way, I risk damaging it with my soldering iron. Alright, so we'll get this set aside. And this one should be stupidly simple. Should be. The tuning assembly is on the outside, so I'm hoping that there's nothing on the inside that we really gotta be too worried about. Just two oval head screws on either side. Oop, got the finish washer with that one. And of course we do need to remember to remove the knobs off the front. And we will be keeping those in here. And that should be everything. This should just... I've got to unplug the speaker anyway. Oh, the magnet on the speaker is, oh. Ooh, that's an interesting sign. We have goo. Here and here, and it is waxy. And that is wax residue from some capacitors, probably biting the dust. Okay, let me get the cabinet out of the way, and then we'll take a look inside the chassis. The Tolex on this could be in better shape, but it's all there. No major tears or anything, so not having to do cabinet work is a bonus. So here's that. Oh, I see what they were going for the battery switchover on this. Instead of having a very complicated, fancy switch, we have this bracket right here with two slots on it where you'd stick the cord, and the bottom prong is just going to hit this slide switch right here, which I'm guessing is probably spring-loaded? Yeah. So in this position, it's switched in, but you stick the cord in there and it holds it over, and then it'll plug it in for battery operation. And we can see our little flag we have here. When we turn the set on, it kicks it up, and we've got this little wire spring guy. I think it's... Well, no, that may be as much as it comes up. I feel like it should be more about there. But, yeah, that's just a neat little feature. Okay, but what do we have inside? Oh. Well, okay, this is interesting. Someone has been in here. They have replaced the cord, and they have replaced a few capacitors. But it's... let's see what has been done here, because I feel like some of this is somewhat half-ass. Okay, first problem, there's only one new film capacitor. All the other wax ones are still in place. So that's already kind of, if you're going to be in here, why not do the job complete, sort of thing. I'm seeing we've got two new electrolytics. We've got one here on going into the can dome. And we've got this one here that's sort of tacked on, and it's got some wires going to it. I'm not quite sure what's up with that. What's it rated at? I think someone just did the bare minimum, 150 volts, 20 microfarads. And this one over here is the same 20 microfarads, 150 volts. But there's still got the main parts of these electrolytics are still in place and still being used. Okay, so the multi-section on this one, these are all at 25 working volts. That's all pretty low. And they are 500, 300, and 200. Now, the lower the voltage, the working voltage on a capacitor is, the lower the leakage current is, from what I understand. That doesn't mean I want to keep using them. But, what's this one rated at? This one is 50 microfarads at 150 volts, so any of those that they put in there would not be anywhere near close enough to work. What's annoying is that they have very obviously removed... They must have removed something. There may have been paper, or dry electrolytics under here that got taken out of circuit, but then again, where did these wires go? And this guy right here, which is coming off the battery switch and might go to the audio output tube. No, that's coming off the rectifier. That one was replaced. It's a 0.047. This, I'm sure, that's going to go away. These little guys over here, these are probably micas. We'll leave those alone. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, include that one, 8, 9. We got 9 papers and what's probably a mica mold faux paper in there to deal with. And nothing wrong with the tuning dial on this one. That's all well and good. But, now some of these are going to be a little fun to get out. We'll have to remove what I'm guessing is probably the oscillator coil assembly and trimmer is bolted to the chassis with one screw here. That'll have to be moved up and out of the way in order to get to that. We've got this interesting apparatus here. What is that for? It's connected to a switch. Refer to instructions. Wave magnet triple high efficiency switch. Performance in automobiles, trains, planes, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no telling what that's doing. Oh, wait, no, this Is that our oscillator coil? That might be our antenna coil. Well, without schematics, hard to say. But yeah, these are tucked in pretty close, so it'll be a little tricky to get them out and replaced. But it shouldn't be too bad. I've worked on some chassis that are this small. I do find it interesting that they're still using dog bone resistors in conjunction with newer carbon comp resistors in a set from, well, this is from 1941. So, interesting. Very interesting. How are we going to do with the electrolytics in this one? This is only a single section, so that's not so bad. My normal procedure for those would be to basically hack the bottom of it off, drill holes in for the new electrolytics, drop them in and solder them to the pre-existing connections. That way I don't have to stuff anything underneath the bottom there, because it's going to get warm in there. Getting them in there in a space like this is a little bit tight. And yeah, that had 3 sections. 2 of them, interestingly, are stuck together. So they must have needed one that was a little higher, like maybe 500 microfarads, and they just jammed the 2 pieces together and created one. And yeah, there's nothing too crazy other than that going on in here. If these are coming off the power switch, really rate it. Well, damn. That may or may not be for the power switch. Where is that coming from? So that's going over to here. That's going to this. Oh, okay. This cap right here, this 0.01 that they've got hooked up, that one is connected from one side of the power line to the rectifier tube. That needs to be a safety cap, so that's no good. Yeah. And is that grounded? It's got connected to 2 leads right there, and yes, it is grounded. So this is going to chassis. I don't know if it's crossed the line or not. I can only assume that the other lead of this... Oh, wait. No, it's going across the line. So this needs to be an X type. My bad, not a Y type. Okay. So I can do my usual on this one without too much fuss, I don't think. It's not particularly pretty. I don't know, could I squeeze... There is some space in there. The can dome, though, is going to throw off heat. And I don't really want to cram much of electrolytics under there if they're going to get really warm. There's technically only 2 there since they've stuffed those 2 connections together. Unless somebody got silly or smart with it. And was one of those... No, none of those were small enough. This had 500, 300, and 200. So someone jammed 2 of those connections together. I'm going to have to check the schematic because that may not be factory. This right here, I assume these connections are going to that electrolytic. This may be someone's botched repair. Okay. I got to do some reading. But I think that's probably going to be good enough for right now. I just wanted to do a preliminary look at these and see what I'd be getting involved with. So, I'm going to get together an order from Mauser. I'm going to get some Nova's plastic polish. And, yeah, get the ball rolling on this. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.